Welcome back. You're still watching Citizen Extra, the Tuesday edition with me, Fred Indimuli. We continue discussing the issue of the running mates debate from yesterday. Soon enough, we'll move on to another headline. Now in studio, just before I introduce my guests, I keep checking this Twitter handle, at Kariara Mudhiora. Just as we were going on a break, it was 9,119. Now it's 9,252, about 130 something likes within 5 minutes. Wow. Well, this is the only way we can tell. This is the only parameters I can use now to gauge the kind of support that Mudhiora Kariara, the only running mate who showed up for the debate yesterday, is getting. I'm sure there could be some different kind of support that is receiving out there. Now in studio we're joined by Dr. Sam Kamau, Mark Bichachi and Charles Munyui. They will be our panelists for this hour. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm sure you must have watched the debate yesterday, or the lack of it. Your quick thoughts on that. Let's start with you, Charles.
The debate that was rather, and I think Kariara got a moment. It happens once in a lifetime, and he enjoyed his time. He made sense, and that's why he's trending. He's going to continue trending. And my concern is, does that transform into votes? Do people like him? Would people elect him? Would he fit, as it were? But I think it was a sad moment. We should have watched that thing. We wanted to watch the debate. The whole country was actually watching, waiting anxiously to watch it. I think moving forward, we need these things to happen, whatever it takes. Do you think it can make a turning point in someone's political career, like what happened to Mudhiora Kariara yesterday? Do you think that could just mark the beginning of something bigger? I'm sure it would slot him somehow, amend the law very quickly, and Al Ghurair or whoever throws his name in his constituency will become an MP shortly after this. But I think being a running mate, it might be a little tricky for him. Yes. Yes. And perhaps, Mark, perhaps this is what some of these people do. You present your name to run for presidency or the running mate so that you get an opportunity to be on such a platform. And even if you do not actually succeed in that election, the next election you can vie for a different seat, and by then the electorate will have known you.
You know, the reality, Fred, is that a platform where you've got millions of Kenyans watching at the same time, tuned in to listen to you, whether you like it or not, it does have an impact. How that is managed afterward then is what you'd call, whether it's a career change, a career improvement, or even a possible run for political office later on. Definitely that is a shining moment for the good gentleman. We congratulate him, and at the same moment I would like to, can you discongratulate someone? In fact, I would like to condemn in the strongest terms the biggest loser of this debate, who's Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, who, by the way, once again proved that he has watermelon ways, waiting for one person to show up so you can make a decision. I'm very, very disappointed in his leadership, and I would like to register my disappointment today on TV.
You think he should have showed up and did what Kariara did?
You know, let me tell you something. Fred, if you and I have a chance to court a girl, and I am told you're on sick off for 3 days, then it is my job to show up and be healthy for those 3 days. Kalonzo had a similar opportunity to woo this country for 90 minutes, and he let us all down. Kabisa, wow. You know, so in the strongest terms possible.
I think that is the best analogy I've had so far. Dr. Sam Kamau, your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm looking at it from the point of a missed opportunity for the Kenyan voter to get a chance to interrogate the issues or the candidate, how best the candidates can articulate the issues they stand for. I was also a bit confused because after the clarification that actually the presidential candidates and their running mates were actually consulted on issues that they were raising concerns about. I'm not sure why they decided to skip the opportunity, but I would say if somebody gave me 90 minutes to speak to an entire nation, I would definitely take the chance, and I'm so proud of my former college mate Kariara. Now we have to identify with him. I have to say that we were in college together and we served in the same Sony Executive Council. But having said that, I think people have to take these debates seriously. I know we tend to prefer our campaigning style of always mobilizing along tribal lines and you know, shouting and insulting one another in the campaign, you know, out there in the campaign rallies. But I think getting an opportunity to interrogate, look at the issues, listen to candidates, articulate their vision for the country is a lost opportunity for the voters and for all the candidates also, but I would also say for the media. The other thing is that there was expectation that was created around these debates, and we're looking forward to the day and to seeing these people actually debate and articulate their policies and their vision for the country. So I think for Kenyans who are left hanging, and we are hoping that the next debate, that is a presidential debate, will actually take place and we'll get a chance to see. As for my feeling is that there are people who expected that the debates would not go on if they withdrew from the process. So I also wish to commend the media for deciding to go ahead with Karriara, who availed himself, and I'm sure next time they will take it more seriously.
Okay, of course, debates KE, that's a hashtag that's trending since yesterday. That means that at least on social media, the discussions continue on what happened yesterday. You can also engage in that hashtag debates KE. Remember, the presidential debate comes up on Monday, 24th of this month. That's next Monday. We're still waiting and hoping that it will actually take place and that all the candidates will show up. We continue with these discussions, and the criticism has not just been on the candidates. We've received quite some criticism as well as the media. Bwana Munyui, do you think the media failed to some extent in organizing these debates?
To the extent that the people, the stakeholders, and especially the debaters, are complaining that they were not appropriately or properly consulted on the issue. And you know, this thing about public participation is why we are where we are, even with IEBC and all the other things. The fact that they are raising that particular issue publicly must be an issue of concern, and the fact that most of them did not turn up, to the extent that even the DP sends someone, I think we are not very clear as to what happened. Number one, we knew this was happening. As Kenyans, we knew it was going to happen, and the media was hyping it. It was happening. So behind the scenes, the relationship between you and the people that were supposed to turn up and come and debate is something that needs to be improved upon, and I am sure the media would not invest so much if they do not want this to succeed. So I think, to me, it's a question of working on it. At least we should be able to have the one on the presidential candidates happening, and we have ample time to ensure that that happens, because in as far as the other one is concerned, now there is very little we can do. But I think the engagement must be clearer. You must be able to we don't even need to know what's going on, as long as you're agreeing behind the scenes that these are the issues of concern, this is a procedure that they have a concern over, and it's been addressed by the media, and there is that interaction, to the extent that whoever is supposed to appear on that debate is there, and they are confident that whatever they had put in place in terms of running and managing this is going to be okay. Yes,
Mark, if I may look at one of the responses we're getting online, there's a tweet here by Stephen Ouma at Anstenef, that's a Twitter handle. He says the Kenyan media lost objectivism long time ago and chose to be partisan. I like the snub by politicians. Now you know they can do without you.
I think that guy needs to learn what democracy is. You cannot have a democratic process without the media. It's impossible, because one of the very tenets of democratic principle is the establishment of the fifth estate, which is the media.
The fourth estate.
Yeah, the fourth estate rather. And the biggest issue that we have here is this: that I have seen the media in this country evolve, and I've had the privilege of being in various media houses and seen how balanced they've tried to be in this particular election. In fact, if we are honest, part of the reason why Kenya has gotten to the point where we expect a debate, where we expect politicians to be able to articulate issues, has to be attributed to the media. And number three rather, if you look at the stage, if you look at the presence, if you look at the setup of the vice presidential debates, it will be foolhardy to say that the media had not prepared for this. The reality is, no democratic country can exist without a free and fair media, and I think the Kenyan media must be congratulated for how much they tried to be balanced. In fact, it's very hard to tell, Fred, and you're a good friend of mine, on which side you lie. that is showing independence quite clearly. So it is erroneous to fault this on the media. I squarely fault it on the politicians who, by the way, in the next 2 days will be asking you, Fred, for an interview. So what really is it? You want the media and then you don't want the media at the same time? They have to choose. It has to have a balance.
Yes, because some of the reactions that actually criticizing the media, Dr. Sam Kamau, it would appear like some people think that the media is in competition with the politicians, that somehow we are also, as the media, running in these elections.
Well, Fred, of course, the media is a key component in the electoral process. In terms, of course, we acknowledge that in terms of giving the candidates and the political parties an opportunity to express themselves, in terms of keeping the citizens informed and updated, and of course the important role of civic education. So I wouldn't say that they are actually in competition with the politicians, but they are equally playing, it's a symbiotic relationship where the politicians, of course, rely on the media, but even the other important bodies like NCIC and IEBC. And therefore, I think this was one of those opportunities. Actually, I look at the debate as a voter education opportunity, where the candidates will get to articulate their issues and their vision for the country, and the media gives them that particular platform. And therefore, to that extent, I would actually commend the media for the initiative, and it's something I would want to see happening in the future, where we tend to focus on the issues and get to grill and interrogate the candidates. Having said that, the fact that actually this did not take off as they intended or as planned, then of course there is a bit of introspection and soul searching, and to see what is it that we could have done differently. I know the politicians are talking about a lack of consultation. I'm not sure the consultation happened to what extent. I'm not sure whether by consultation they mean they also wanted to dictate and maybe influence the kind of questions that would be asked. And I'm still waiting actually for that clarification, because I think what came out is that they were actually informed. They were actually formally and informally they were contacted, but when they said there was no consultation, I'm wondering actually what actually is that consultation they are talking about. When they talk about the format and the moderation, maybe they should have clarified what were their expectations before actually deciding to snap the debates. But if I look at it and going forward, I would expect that debates it could even be entrenched in the law to make sure that this is expected. There is a requirement on the part of the politicians to actually face the electorate and tell them exactly what do you want to achieve for this particular nation.
And as we wrap up this discussion on the running mates debate yesterday, of course, away from William Ruto, the Deputy President, and the NASA running mate Kalonzo Musyoka, there were 6 other running mates that were meant to show up for the first debate. Ruto and Musyoka were to show up for the second debate. None showed up. Only one, Eliud Mudiora Kariara, showed up. Charles Munyui, don't you think that these 6 candidates, the 5 who did not show up, actually lost a bigger opportunity simply because to many Kenyans this would have been the very first time we're getting to see their faces or hearing their names?
I don't even know most. I actually don't know them personally. I don't think, other than the top 2, for lack of a better term to use. The other ones, people don't know them, and I'm amazed that they did not even turn up. They should even be ready to walk into every TV show every morning, every evening, to just be known. And I think when you don't turn up for such, on the guise of you're not consulted or whatever it is that you're using to not turn up, I think it's amazing. It's unbelievable. And if I was a Kenyan out there, I would not give them a vote. Even a relative should not be able to vote for these individuals, because how do you vote for people that you don't even know? Number 2, most of these presidential candidates are supposed to have manifestos. That was a very, very good opportunity. We've seen the NASA manifesto, or 3 of them, I don't know, 2 or 3, the Jubilee manifesto. We don't know the other individuals. We don't even know when they will launch theirs, or they have already launched theirs. This was a very, very good opportunity to come and say this is what is different in terms of fighting corruption, as far as we are concerned, infrastructure and empowerment for youth and women and men. This is what we are planning on. This was a totally good opportunity to do that without turning up and showing Kenyans what you have, and even having us recognize you in the first instance. Then what are you telling us? Honestly, we can even meet you in the streets and we don't recognize you. So I think, to me, and you're planning on becoming the Deputy President, seriously, I don't think they're serious.
Yes, Mark, on that issue of the other running mates.
First, I think they should be stripped of their titles as running mates, and they should be called busybodies, because what is the point of running? You should be able to interact with the media and articulate your points. If you're not doing that, what are you doing? Are you even running? I think really these guys wanna be celebrities. They just wanted the security detail to be kept secure but on the Kenyan taxpayers' dime. And I think they should be very ashamed of themselves, and as my good friend has said, even their wives should not vote for them. And if I was their child, I would for a while suspend my second name, because it is an embarrassment to the nation, it is an embarrassment to themselves, and quite frankly they should be ashamed. And I hope that there is a time where it will be in law where they can be even stricken off from the ballot, because if you have 1%, less than 1% of the vote, and you have an opportunity to address the nation, and you don't even show up, what's the point? What really is the point? So I think they should be called busybodies. Drop the name running mates. Just say I exist on a ballot.
Okay, Dr. Sam Kamau, finally the presidential debate happens on the 24th. Now this is a big one. What would you advise these other candidates whether or not Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga show up?
Fred, I actually belong to a school of thought that believes that the debate should be restricted to those who have a realistic path to the presidency. And that is, there's some wisdom, for example, they do in the US to ensure that it's only those who manage to score 15% and above in the polls are invited to the debate. The others can only dilute the process or maybe provide or create sideshows. But I think we should actually restrict this to people who have a realistic path to the presidency. Now, these people, and some of them I can tell you for free, they were looking forward to the debate to get an opportunity to introduce themselves to the nation the way Dida did in 2013. And maybe they are looking for those 90 minutes or maybe 10 minutes of fame where they get to introduce themselves to the nation like Karriera did. While it may have worked for Karriera, it doesn't necessarily help us as voters to be able to make our decision, because realistically we know it is only Uhuru Kenyatta or Raila Odinga who has a realistic path to the presidency. Having said that, I commend again the media for deciding that even if they scored less than 5% in the opinion polls, they will still be given a chance to articulate their issues and talk to the nation. So I again would want to advise them, come next week when they get, because they already have the invitation, they should seize the moment, take the 90 minutes, express your vision to the nation, tell the people what you stand for, where you are going, where you want to lead this country, take advantage. And I would also of course want to urge Uhuru Kenyatta, now that Raila Odinga or Salim Lone confirmed that he will be participating, I think give us this opportunity as voters to know what is it exactly that you stand for. I don't think the debates will harm them. They can only and help those who are undecided to make up their mind. And I think since we only have about 20 days to the election, this is the time to actually make a pitch to those people who are still undecided and those people who are still wavering to make up their mind.
Okay. Now, away from matters of the presidential debate, of course, we'll keep talking about it in our subsequent bulletins and shows as we head closer to the presidential debate that takes place on the 24th of this month. That's next Monday. Same venue, Catholic University of Eastern Africa. Let's now talk about the electoral processes. And most of the headlines this morning, I think one of the biggest headlines that caught my attention was the fact that NASA, in one of the court processes, now has suggested that the polls could be called off if the e-system fails. And they say that if the coalition told the High Court that the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission has failed to ensure there is complementary technology to act as a backup during the August 8th elections as required by the law. Now, this talk about postponing the election has been said over and over at Jubilee platforms that NASA don't want the elections come August the 8th. Now this time it's coming from NASA that they're actually suggesting, yes, probably we should call off the elections. Don't you think that 20 days to the elections, it is a bit risky to start discussing this, Mark?
You know, the reality is NASA has what, 31, 32 cases in court challenging various aspects of this election. Now the problem is you're going into an election and you're giving your voters mixed signals. You're giving them the signal, go out and vote, and then you're giving them the signal that the IEBC is not ready. NASA really needs to make up its mind and decide whether it wants to be part of this election or not, because the sooner they make that decision, the better for them. And here's why. This election is so tight, it's going to be about voter turnout. And how you get voters to turn out, the the world over is to give them confidence that their vote actually counts. If NASA is going to keep playing this game where it's telling its own voters that they don't trust the process, they could have a problem of voter turnout, because Kenyans will reason and say, you know, if my vote doesn't count, then why am I going out to vote? Yet NASA needs their people to come out and vote. 80 to 90% voter turnout on that particular day. The reality is we've got 20 days. There is not enough time to have all these cases determined upon. NASA needs to make a decision firmly to decide whether they're going ahead or not, and then wait for the election and see the results and decide from there. Otherwise, this jumping from one point to another is not going to serve them well in this particular election.
Yes, Charles, don't you think that NASA should focus more on trying to push the IEBC to put its house in order and not talking about the possibility of a postponement?
It's amazing, really. If I remember Raila very well, he's one guy who fought for the fixing of the elections date, because you remember Moi's time. We never used to know the date of elections. He used to surprise us with that, and it was his tool, and he actually said it publicly, that is my tool. Then all of a sudden you have a date way before the elections, and you don't work towards achieving what needs to be achieved in between there, so that by the time you come into the elections, you have a... In fact, the question everyone is asking right now, was the problem the commissioners really? Because if we should, maybe you should have remained with the commissioners and dealt with the other issues that go about the you know, around the matters elections. Because if we have new commissioners, yet we are much unhappier than we were the last elections, then it is very, very telling. We have a legislature, we have consistently had legislatures that have not been working, because by now in Dimoli we should be able to clean our voter register as an ongoing process. What is the big deal? Why haven't they legislated, including NASA? And I'm more annoyed with the NASA legislators, as it were. How come they have never legislated on us having one document through which we vote, so that we don't come the election time and start registering people to vote? Why have we not had this arrangement between the registrar of birth and death, so that when one dies, then that information is passed very quickly to the IEBC, so that the voter register cleans itself? These are the fundamental questions we ask. Have we weakened that institution deliberately, knowing that come election time you only need to convince our people this is not working? So that, because I don't understand why last time, and I'm aware this matter is alive in court, we might not be able to say a lot of things. It is NASA that had a problem with the backup system. Now they are saying the lack of the same should be the reason as to why we should not have an election. So I think someone needs to come out clearly and tell us, what is your position on these issues exactly? Because is it a matter of life and death that you don't want to go to these elections, and is it because you know there is going to be ringing, or is it because you're not ready? And I think, like my colleague has said, if you're not prepared for these elections, then you look forward to having a month or two to prepare for the same, or to strengthen areas that you think are weak, and then you have the elections. I think that is a clear message they're sending out there, and they'll be surprised, because the voter turnout in their areas of strength will be very, very poor.
Yet it is the systems and processes that guarantee a free and fair poll, meaning the transmission and tallying of votes. Probably that process could determine whether or not the process was free and fair. Sam, don't you think NASA has a legitimate case?
Well, Fred, you have to look back and see how far we've come. From the time we were talking about talks and minimum reforms, there are certain demands and minimum demands that NASA had, or that time it was called, so that they could participate in the elections. And they were clear that unless the IEBC, as previously constituted, was reformed, they were not going to go into the elections. And so we did that. After that, there have been a series of issues in terms of legislation in Parliament, in terms of a committee that was formed to look at the different issues that were well articulated in the talks. Now, after everything has been put in place, we have seen that consistently NASA has continued to raise and place obstacles in the path towards elections. While I agree some of their concerns have merit and they should be considered and looked at, because from history, of course, NASA wants to make sure that they have closed every loophole that would allow for manipulation or rigging of elections. I think the demands that they keep placing every day is almost giving credence to the accusations that perhaps they are not prepared for for the elections. Why I'm saying this is that it's only about 20 or 19 days to the elections, and when you keep raising obstacles, how far can we go? For example, you file a new case that will of course place a new obstacle, and IEBC has to look at that instead of preparing for the elections, and then at the end of the day we still keep accusing IEBC that you are not prepared. Now, having said that, what is NASA saying and what are the issues they are raising? World over, if you look at even those countries that are fully embraced electronic voting, they still know and accept that there is a possibility technology is not perfect, technology can fail, and therefore what are the options? I know there is a debate between manual process and a complementary system, and I think it's the rules that have not been there. But given the demonstration like the one that we did here, I think on Citizen TV last week, clearly IEBC has put certain issues in place to make sure that if a voter is not identified electronically, there is a complementary system which is also semi-computerized to make sure that no voter is disenfranchised. Having said that, I think NASA is placing itself in a position where it's susceptible to the propaganda that has been leveled against it, that they are not ready for the elections, or maybe they are afraid of losing. The other thing is, Fred, and you have to acknowledge, not just the voters, not even just the media, but everybody is actually tired of this prolonged electoral process. We actually want the election to happen and we get over with it and move on with our lives. Now, any possibility that the elections could actually be postponed is already creating what you are calling the voter fatigue, the anxiety that is already there. We actually want the election to happen, and therefore NASA should actually come out and tell its supporters, we are ready, we want this election to happen. It's unfathomable that this could be postponed. So we hope that the courts will be able to address these issues within this week, and we hope that no new challenge will come up, because we want elections on August 8th.
Politically, looking at this politically, how much does this hurt NASA? Because Jubilee has come out, Mark, and talked about the fact that NASA, allegations that alleging that NASA does not want to go to these elections. Now NASA itself comes out in a court process and says there's a possibility we could actually need to postpone these elections. Do you think it was really necessary 20 days to the elections for them to voice that particular issue?
You know, I really wonder the strategists behind NASA, how they reason out certain things. Because number one, let's remember that NASA was, and CORD as it were, was a huge part of the parliamentary process towards this election. This election was not a surprise. So NASA even went on the streets last year and part of this year to make sure that we have new commissioners and things like that. Now the reality of the matter is this: what is coming out very strongly is that Jubilee is coming out to its voters like, we are ready, we are winning, and we will do this thing on August 8th. NASA is looking like it's not too sure about its win. It's coming out looking like it's half its foot is in the water, the other one is on dry land, and that is not a good position 20 days to an election. Typically in any campaign cycle, by this time, what you should be doing is consolidating your vote. You should be bolstering your numbers by saying, you know what, we've got this, we are going to make it, we are going the full 9 yards, we are going to win this thing, regardless of what is happening. Secondly, in any election, including the American election, which we followed very closely last year, there are always concerns of, are we prepared? Is there a possibility of hacking? Those concerns always exist. Those concerns are not a matter of court, they're a matter of having your party agents, your electoral agents, monitoring these loopholes that are there. That is what should happen. NASA should invest its time in making sure that they have agents in the right places within the IEBC, within the electoral process, to make sure that whatever system is used is the legitimate system. That is what they should be doing, and at the same time giving confidence to their supporters that they are winning. They are not doing that. Now, unfortunately for them, Jubilee is doing that, and what Jubilee is coming out like is that it's more confident in its win than NASA is, and that is never good for your voter turnout. It's never good for your voters' confidence in yourself.
Sam, do you think this will hurt NASA?
Well, I think it could hurt NASA in the sense that after hyping, because you understand there has been a period where NASA has had the momentum in terms of mobilizing, especially after they finally agreed on the presidential candidate. NASA has had momentum and saying that we are ready for this election, we are putting measures in place to make sure that we actually win this thing. But now the last minute, again, when you keep talking about rigging, the elections will be rigged or there are loopholes for rigging, it could also send a message to their supporters that why do I need to vote if this thing will be rigged? I think they need to assure their supporters that this election election will take place. We have the numbers to win, and they have actually been saying now, I think they have revised from 10 million strong to 15 million strong. Maybe that is what they should concentrate on telling their voters. But what I have said is that this has actually exposed NASA and left NASA susceptible to the consistent propaganda that Jubilee has been saying. These people are not ready for the elections. These people are afraid of losing. So in that sense, it could actually hurt NASA. They should come out and say, we are winning this thing, we have the numbers, and nobody can actually overturn the will of the people. Having said that, what are these small issues that are remaining where NASA feels? I know, given the experience of 2007 and partly 2013, what they keep saying that the election could have been stolen from them. They are trying to seal all the loopholes. But then again, at what cost? Because like I said, they have made so many demands on IEBC, and I think IEBC has been responding fairly and trying to engage with them. And they have also gone to court seeking certain prayers, and the courts have also favored them in a sense, by in the sense that most of their petitions have gone through. Now that you have gotten to this particular issue, why doesn't NASA just come out, express confidence in the process, and say that we actually are prepared going into this election? Show some level of optimism, give some level of hope, give some level of confidence to your supporters, so that as we go to the polls, the supporters are actually ready for victory. You know, at least in their minds, they know that this thing is possible. But as it stands right now, I think they are sowing doubts and confusing their voters.
Yes, Charles Munyui, of course, let's be fair to NASA. This statement was not made by the political arm. It is a lawyer who was representing NASA in court, and it is in a court process. Do you think the political arm of NASA can actually remedy this situation? Is there an opportunity to turn the narrative around, that probably that is not what they're the message they are trying to send out to the public? It's 20 days to the elections.
Indemnity, you are in court as an advocate or a lawyer, having been instructed by your client. So the message is taking there belongs to the client. It's not his personal message. I think to me, NASA has been seeing enemies in every bush, and that is very good. If you're seeing enemies in every bush and you're shouting about it, it is very good for those people that are passionate about you, that are crazy, so to say, about you. The core supporters that you have, because they will work with you, because they are seeing these enemies are going to finish you. But it does not work very well for people that are out there that are not decided on whom they are going to vote for. You might end up losing them because they cannot see you agenda. Remember, to me, this is diversionary if you ask me. You come up with a manifesto that is supposed to address the basis around which you are vying, and you've told us Jubilee has failed in the area of corruption, then you're told you're sleeping with corrupt individuals. Jubilee has not been able to give people unga, you're not able to deliver that, to clearly come out and articulate how you'll give that unga. I think these are the main issues that people realize, that if we continue addressing matters around issues that are in the manifestos, we will lose it. So how you hold your people together is by bringing all these other diversionaries, and if possible, suspend the elections for a month or two, so that you can be able to revamp and maybe work your strategy better. So I think, to me, they need to realize that they have their people together, the core supporters, but the guys who are not decided whom they are going to vote for are watching. And this usually happens a week to elections, is when the swing votes now decide this is the way we are going. So to me, if they continue this way, elections will be held on 8th and they will lose the swing votes.
Yes, and even as we talk about the possibility of postponing the elections, another headline that caught my eye today reads, projects at risk of poll costs hit 50 billion shillings. We are running the second most expensive elections in the world. The total cost has gotten to 49.9 billion shillings. 42.9 billion shillings has gone directly to the IEBC. The rest being distributed to the judiciary, the National Intelligence Service, and the Registrar of Political Parties. 50 billion, Mark?
You know, I'm actually in shock myself, because our voters are 20 million voters. India had 1.2 billion voters, and it had a cheaper election. You know, this is classic Kenyan madness. You know, Kenya is a country where we spend so much money on the frivolous. In a year where we've had doctors strike, we've had nurses strike, we've had lecturers strike, we've had all manner of strikes, and that amount of money is pretty much what we were looking for to be very sustainable in our existence. Now, the reality of the matter is this: Kenya needs to stop having socialites for politicians. This is the problem. But in a Kenyan news cycle, even when it's not a campaign year, half of the news is about politicians. They've become our celebrities, our musicians, our entertainers. They dance, they sing, they have scandals, they have multiple wives. When they die, children come out of the woodwork. We really need to stop this over-romanticism with our politicians. That is what we need to stop. Because when we over-romanticize something, then we're overspending, because that's clearly an overspend. How can we spend 50 billion, the second most expensive election in the world, and we are not even the 30th richest country in the world? It makes no sense. So we need to mature as a country and move beyond spending so much money on our politicians and on our politics. In fact, I was reading somewhere that the campaigns themselves, what is being spent is more than equal of what Trump and Hillary spent in America. Yes. In a country that has a population of over 450 million people, we are a tenth of that, and we're spending the same money. What does that tell you? That our politics is about business. So campaigns are about investments, and ruling our country becomes about reaping from those investments. And that is also why we have rampant corruption, because our politics is too much money involved in it, and that pulls in the greedy people to come into it.
Now, Sam, of course, the headline, and I'm quoting the story on the Daily Nation, in 2013 the total cost of the election was 26 billion. Now it's doubled. Now Nigeria, with nearly 70 million voters, spent 60.3 billion in its 2015 elections. That's the most expensive. Why would Kenya spend so much? How unique is our situation?
Fred, I think, and by the way, you have to acknowledge that the 50 billion does not factor in, for example, if the courts decide that a new company will be given the printing tender, there's a possibility, of course, that the cost could go higher. We've also not considered the fact that political parties and the candidates have actually spent a lot of money. It appears that elections time in Kenya is good for business, of course, of tenderpreneurs and other people who are actually deeply or heavily invested in the process. You also have to acknowledge, of course, to be fair, there are certain requirements and demands that have been put on the IEBC and on the whole process in terms of preparing for this election. For example, the procurement of new kits, although we had procured others in 2013, and whereby there about 7 billion was wasted in that process, and that is why I was again concerned. Now that we have procured new kits for this particular election, will it be useful? Will it still be in use come 2022? But having said that, of course, there are so many requirements that we placed on IEBC to make sure that elections are free and fair. For example, capping the number of voters in a polling station or a particular stream to 700, it means then we have to increase the number of poll officials. We have to increase the number of the polling stations and the election officials who will be brought into the process. Of course, also the number of kits. So in that sense, that could explain why the cost has tremendously gone up compared to 2013. But again, you have to acknowledge, and Mark has said, our unhealthy obsession with politics and the electoral process means that the stakes are so high, and therefore any amount of money that is demanded for this particular process is to be given. For example, IEBC had even indicated actually they didn't have the 2.5 billion for printing of the ballot papers, and Parliament had actually to make a special provision to make sure that money was available from the 2017-2018 budget to cater for this. And I think it is because of these demands we are making on IEBC and on the electoral process that of course gives justification to certain people to make sure that any money that is asked for will be provided. Of course, part of the amount goes towards preparation in terms of security and procuring new equipment. I don't know whether it is because of anticipation that there could be challenges or there could be trouble, but I think it is our unhealthy obsession with politics and the electoral process that makes this such a high stakes game, that we are willing to invest so much money into this, not considering the issues that are more demanding and pressing. For example, we still have the food security issue. The lecturers and the nurses are out there agitating for their rights, and of course some of the promises that have been made by the politicians, for example on the free secondary education, means then that it will become much more expensive to run the country. But I have to acknowledge it doesn't make sense that we're actually spending more money than most other countries when we are compared and looking at our election. That we are spending so much. It's not justifiable. But again, you have to remember, Fred,
on that when they say we spend too much money, is the average per voter.
Yes, it's the average per
yes.
voter, but it still doesn't make sense. That I think we are spending more than, it's about 2,000 and something.
2,540.
But when you look at that, for example, what Rwanda is spending, you see slightly over 100.
Rwanda is spending 105 shillings per
exactly,
voter.
105 and 2,000 per voter. It actually doesn't make sense.
Even Uganda is spent 516 shillings per voter. Nigeria, which I had mentioned earlier, yes, they spent more money in total, but it was 861 shillings per voter. Kenya is spending 2,540 for each of the registered 19.6 million voters. Only second to Papua New Guinea, which spends about 6,300 shillings equivalent per voter.
Fred, you have to acknowledge that Kenya, we also live with inflated costs on everything. Even the cost of land and property in Kenya is way exaggerated compared to other countries. Maybe that is the culture we have built. And it creates so much hunger and greed, of course, in the people.
Charles, we've created an economy around the election. Of course, the election does come with its own demands and supply lines. But surely, don't you think this is a bit obscene?
Huge and monstrous, humongous. It's annoying even. But if you look at the case of Rwanda, for instance, I was watching a report on Rwanda. They have elections. Their ballots are being printed in Kigali, in the capital city. I mean, we have a government printer here. We print our money in this country. We print our passports in this country. We print our IDs. Checkbooks are printed in this country. So what security marks are we talking about? It's a question of mistrust. We don't trust each other. And then we pass that mistrust, whether it is real or perceived. We
are paying for trust.
We are paying for trust. There is nothing else to it. We are just paying for trust because, for instance, I don't understand. IEBC should be conducting nominations for these political parties. All you need is a voter register, a members register for each respective political party that does not have names running across the different political parties. You can even hold that in the same classroom, the same day, the same time, and you'll have results saying this is the person who won, and there will be all these matters of litigation will just drop by 90 or 80%. So I think, to me, the fact that we have to spend 2.5 billion shillings in the first instance to print ballots in another country, the fact that we have to involve ourselves in very expensive procurement procedures for all these things, the fact that we don't trust each other, then Kenyans have realized that we cannot be able to trust each other. Every time we look like we are working towards matters trust, we are taken back very, very quickly to being reminded that, hey, come on, we cannot be able to trust that other side. So I think, to me, it is more of that. And then, of course, there is this little bit of corruption here and there. And the fact that everyone knows, even suppliers out there know that you don't trust yourselves, then they'll put figures that are humongous when it comes to what you need to be supplied, because they know they'll get away with it. And if you're going for the best, then it's going to be expensive. What are these what we are talking about? If a nomination process and via photocopies of ballots gave us certain candidates, and those are the candidates to be in the ballot, why are you telling me that these ballots must be printed in some 10 countries that have not been identified 10 days to elections? I mean, come on. Yes. These things can be done here. We need to work around issues of trust. We need to empower the commissions and the relevant independent authorities that are there, or rather commissions and offices, so that even if you don't win, and you did not win because certain games were played, then if you walk into court, you are guaranteed that you will have a fair process and you will have rulings in your favor. So it is that simple. The moment we have that, we will not find ourselves spending so much money on this.
Mark, 50 billion, yet we still do not have a watertight process, at least given the number of court cases that are still going on.
You know, I'm just laughing to myself because I'm mentally calculating. If we are 20 million voters and it takes 20 shillings to print a color laser printed document in River Road, so basically we can have this printed in River Road at 400 million Kenya shillings and save a few billions for the country. This is the kind of mathematics and insanity that we entertain in this country. The problem of Kenya is this: whenever we are faced with a problem, this is what we do. We throw time and we throw money at it. This is how we solve our problems in this country. That every time there's a problem, let's take a bunch of money and throw it at the problem and hope it will go away. This is how we ended up with so many hospital kits not being used. This is how we ended up with Vision 2030, which is a good vision, but we somehow hope that as a function of time we will prosper. You know, there's this saying tiny moja nitamake, but I'm not doing anything towards this point where it's called making it. And this is the problem that I have with Kenya as a nation. We had a date that was set, 4 years ago, these processes, we could have even, listen, we are making laptops, tablets rather, in our own country. It means we could have had these solutions long time ago. 50 billion shillings is what? 5 thicker roads? 5 thicker roads built and finished? So the reality of the matter is this. This is a pure excuse. It is a bad expense in terms of the exchequer, in terms of taxing the people. There is no justifiable reason as to why we have to spend this much money to have still a very questionable process that the IBC is being questioned upon at every turn. What we should have for 50 billion shillings is we should have the best voting system this country, this world rather, has ever seen. And it's a shame for us, and I think as Kenyans we need to improve.
49.9 billion shillings, that's the budget we are looking at to fund these elections, which are coming in 20 days time. Thank you so much, Mark Bichachi, Dr. Sam Kamau and Charles Munyui, helping us analyze the issues with regard to that, and also for your considered comments with regard to the no-show during the presidential running mates debate yesterday. We'll now take another break. Citizen Extra will be back discussing a lot more issues.